I was reading a book recently. It's called The Psychology of Money. Really famous book. I'm pretty sure it's really good. I think the author's like Morgan something or something Housewell. Something. If you look it up, you'll find it, right? And that book is so good. It's literally just like a bunch. I think it's 20 chapters where it just talks about different the psychology of money, obviously, right? But it breaks it down in such a way that it makes it so simple for anyone to understand. And anyone who's interested in like finance and psychology will be like, damn, this book is good as hell. I remember I read it a while back, but I think I was just reading it just to read it. But then I got back into it recently and I was like, wait, this book is so good. I restarted the whole thing and I read the whole thing through and I was like, yo, this book is so good because I'm interested in both psychology and finance and money and all that. So just to see the way people think about money and the way I think about money, the guy shared exactly how he thinks about money. I was like, yo, this all makes a lot of sense, but there was like certain chapters that made me think about things completely differently. So there was one that was like luck and risk are doppelgangers. They're like sides of each of the coin, right? So with every single decision you make, there's luck and risk involved. And so the way he explained it would be like, just to put it in the most concise way, if you want to read the book, of course, right? But he would say some decisions are made and they're seen as lucky and some are seen as super risky and it doesn't make sense, right? So if you, whatever decision you make, you are adopting an amount of luck and risk. Luck and risk are involved in every decision, no matter what you want to say, right? If somebody got rich, they either got lucky or they got really risky and they took a lot of risk on and they failed, or they got lucky and they made it, right? But if you tell someone like, oh, you got rich because you were lucky, they're gonna get a little bit offended. So it's not commonly said, but luck and risk is involved in everything. I think Mark Cuban recently said that if he was born even a year later or a year before, he wouldn't have become a billionaire. And it's true, because when you're to become a billionaire is like very, very, there's a lot of luck involved, right? You need to be born in a certain time. You need, like, I think when he talked about like he invested in some technology company or something and it boomed. It was like one of the biggest ones. I don't want to say which technology company back because I forgot and I don't want to mistake it. But like, if he was born a year later, he wouldn't have that single opportunity, right? And there was other people who invested in other technologies that didn't make it, right? So they took on a lot of risk making a big bet and they lost. He took a big bet and he made it. And he's seen as like super, like, super, he made big achievements, become a billionaire, which is a big achievement, whatever the case may be. But he made a decision and there was a certain amount of luck involved and a certain amount of risk involved. He just happened to be on the lucky side, right? And you do this with every decision. And I feel like that's so true that it's crazy. Like every single decision you can make, luck and risk are involved, at least like 20-30% of it, but it's never accounted for in your equation. So like you'll buy a stock, you'll buy a crypto, you'll be like, yeah, this makes sense, this and that. And I did all the technical analysis and I did the fundamental analysis and this is gonna go this and that. It's like, even if all of that can go in, you still, it's very hard to account for luck and risk, so you don't account for it. But it has to be like incorporated into your thing. So like realistically, if you ever make a decision, you're only really making like 75-80% of it. The other 20%, you just have to be like, hope for the best. Like it can either be luck or it can be risk, and then it'll determine whether you're on, you make it. Because think about like all the people that go into business, right? You're like, this guy's in business, he makes $1 million a year, this and that, and it's like that's talked about all the time, but they don't talk about like the, what is it, 95% of businesses that fail. So all these people, like, let's just say 100 people went into business and 95% of them failed and the 5% made it. The 5% of the people that everybody talk about that happen to be on the lucky side, and 95% of the people who made the same decision, they just were on the risky side. Risky as in like they took on the loss, right? And the lucky side meaning they happen to win from it. But people talk about, yeah, start your own business, you'll become a millionaire overnight, this and that, whatever bullshit they spread on the internet. You are betting on a decision, and whether you get lucky or you take on a lot of risk, it has to be involved into your like decision making. And another one was big wins are like made by tails, which is essentially, like, when I was reading, I didn't really like the terminology tails, but essentially like you can have a bunch of losses and you can still win. And that's just how life is, right? Like a lot of times in like school or wherever you learned it, the idea of like a mistake is like really frowned upon and looked down upon, but it's like mistakes happen in life and they need to be like not thought of as something bad. When you make mistakes, you get better, and until you keep making the same, like if you think about it, right? you only get better after you make a mistake. If you continue to do it the wrong way and you didn't see it as a mistake or nobody corrected you, you would never have gotten better, right? And all it takes is like, you can make 99 mistakes, and all it takes is for one time for you to win to make it, right? Because those 99 mistakes led to that one win. So you need to go through the mistakes to eventually get to that win. And you only need to win once. You can make as much mistakes as you want, take the loss or whatever. You only need to win once, because once you win once, you made it, right? Or whatever the case may be. And with that idea, it's like, I feel like a lot of people who have their own personal portfolio investments, they see this very often. I see it myself, where you can invest in like 10, 15, 20 stocks or whatever. And it's the whole idea why people that say, yeah, diversify your investments, bet on like multiple things, not too big, not too small, so you can have a good amount of wins or whatever. And like even with me, I invested in like 5 or 6 stocks that are like 95% down. Like I've lost pretty much 95% of my investment on those, but I have 2 or 3 investments that have made me so much more money than all those losses combined. So it's like, you can have a bunch of losses, but you just need to win once. As long as that one win is big enough to offset the losses, it's a good year, it's a good portfolio. And that's exactly what people look for. People that, like he even talked about in the book, venture capitalists will invest a shit ton of money into across like 50 companies, and 35 of them will do shit. 5 or 10 of them will do decent, and the other last 5 will make them the biggest amount of profit that offsets all the 35 losses that they, made. And that idea makes it so much more comfortable for me to like invest and take on a risk. Because like, you think, oh yeah, I wouldn't want to be on the risky side, I want to be on the lucky side. It's like, you can't predict that. So you kind of got to have to diversify, or just make sure that the wins that you want to have, make sure they're big wins. Now, I recently saw like a podcast clip or some really old clip of a portfolio manager who said the idea of diversifying your portfolio and having like 20 different investments just to make sure you have like a good chance of winning or whatever, makes no sense to him. So he was like a record breaker in terms of like how much his ROI was annually or whatever. He had like 25-30% annually, which is fucking nuts. But he said he would only pick 5 stocks, and then he would invest heavily in each of them. And even if 2 of them or 3 of them lost, the 2 others would be such big winners, it would offset the losses. And when I thought of that and I read that chapter, I was like, oh my God, like that makes a lot of sense. Most of these people, they bet a lot and they lose a lot, but then they make sure that one bet really hits. And another one, the last chapter I want to talk about that made a lot of sense, is like the idea of room for error. And he was like, a lot of people have like a safety net, and they like think about it as like this idea that if everything goes wrong, this and that. It's like, no, you just have to make your plan fluid enough for a lot of adjustments to be made, because a lot of the big things that happen in life are unpredictable, right? So he talks about like, we have like all the big history events like World War II and 9/11 and all these other shits that happened, but nobody talks about all the things that happened in between, because they were small, but they mattered and they affected the markets and this and that. So you just need to have a plan that allows for a lot of adaptation. And another author that talks about this is Robert Greene in I think the 48 Laws of Power, where he talks about the idea of having a fluid plan. Like a lot of these like army leaders like Napoleon would have plans that would be so easily adjusted if something else happened, and those are the best plans. I think in the book The Psychology of Money, he said the best plan is of having a plan that won't go according to plan. So essentially just having a fluid plan, making sure that you can make adjustments, making sure that everything doesn't have to go, like essentially having room for error means having a plan that has the least amount of things that need to go right for the plan to work. So if you have a plan that has like 10 legs, like a parlay, whereas like all 10 of these need to go right for the plan to work, that's a really bad plan, because there's not enough room for fluidity, there's not enough room for error. So you need to have a plan that's like, even if it's 10 legs, they each have a lot of like room for it to like move around, or like if it's like instead of betting on something to be like, oh, this guy needs to hit exactly 30 points, be like, he needs to hit 20 to 40. Like you're giving yourself more room for error on each of them. So it doesn't matter how big it is, it just matters how each individual plan or like leg in this really specific situation has for error. So just like when you think about it more so like that, where like, okay, if I don't need everything to go right, most likely I will succeed with this, right? So you just want to have a plan that allows you to make as much mistakes as possible, essentially, right? but will still allow you to get to the end goal, because obviously you want the end goal, but you just need to make sure you have enough space to make mistakes. That's it. Read the book. It's a really good book. Psychology of Money.